12 Years Across Borders, a memoir by Chichuanlin, from Matter, to the English reader. The phone rings at my office in Fukuoka at strange hours. A daughter in Taipei whose father has a biopsy result she does not understand. A son in Kaohsiung whose mother wants to try a clinic in Tokyo that advertises on Facebook. A young man in Taiwan whose father has just been told there may be nothing more to do, calls because his family has found a clinical trial in Japan. I have taken these calls for 12 years. This book is what I have learned from taking them. A few things you should know before you begin. I wrote the original manuscript in traditional Chinese for Taiwanese readers who share my cultural shorthand. A Japanese edition followed, rebuilt sentence by sentence for readers in Fukuoka and Tokyo. The English version in your hands is a third act. It is not the Chinese book in English clothes. Scenes have been reordered. Digressions that Taiwanese readers would find charming have been cut. Asides that Japanese readers would find necessary have been cut further. What remains is what I believe can travel. Some of the prose is mine, reshaped. Some of it I wrote directly in English, which is my third language, and the one in which I am most clumsy. If a sentence occasionally sounds like it was built by a man who learned his English from business emails and American films in subtitled releases, that is because it was. I have let some of that through. The alternative was to sound like a ghost written CEO memoir, and I would rather sound like myself. I am Taiwanese. I was born in 1983. I went to university in Taiwan, then to Waseda in Tokyo for a master's in materials science, and ended up in Fukuoka, a port city on the southern island of Kyushu, closer to Seoul than to Tokyo. I've lived in Japan for 16 years. I am not a physician. I am not a scientist. I am a coordinator, which is not a job title that translates cleanly. The Japanese call it kudenita. In Taiwan, it sometimes gets rendered as case manager. In practice, it means I am the person on the other end of the phone at 2 in the morning. When the patient has forgotten what the doctor said that afternoon and the family is starting to argue in a hotel room in Hakata. I think in 3 languages. Most days I switch between them without noticing. This book was written in all 3, and something is lost in each translation. I have made peace with that. American jacket copy wants a David vs. Goliath arc because American readers want a victory at the end. This is not a triumph narrative, but it is not a defeat one either. He keeps the company, he keeps his name. He does not sell either to Hangzhou. The Goliath in this story is not a single villain. It is the weight of 3 medical bureaucracies, Japanese, Chinese, Taiwanese, a regulatory regime I did not train for, a Chinese conglomerate that once offered to buy my company, and whose loss I am still recovering from, a pandemic that closed every border I depended on, and the long grind of being a foreigner in a country that is polite to foreigners, but does not finally let them in. The David in the story, meaning me, refuses the buyout, keeps the door open, takes the next call. This is an immigrant builds something story, a small something on hard ground with no inheritance and no patron. That is the book you are holding. Specific scenes, specific numbers. A rented grey Toyota on the expressway to Kurum in the summer of 2014. A clinic raid at 4 in the morning on May 25, 2016. A hotel ballroom in Hangzhou where the baijiu was poured at 9 a.m. and a deal was proposed that I should have walked away from sooner than I did. A mother in a Fukuoka coffee shop crying quietly because Kyushu University had just after 2 months of meetings decided it could not treat her son after all. I have tried not to write inspirational prose. I do not believe in inspirational prose. I believe in receipts. So there are a lot of numbers in this book. The price of a single peptide vaccination in 2015. The cost of a round-trip business class ticket Fukuoka, Hangzhou in 2017, the 80% collapse in revenue in April 2020. The numbers are there because they are the truth. If they read as dry, that is the texture of the work. There are also disclaimers. This book discusses cancer treatments, including some that were investigational at the time and some that remain unapproved in the United States. Nothing in it is medical advice. If you are a patient or a family member and you find yourself nodding at a passage, please do not take that nod as a recommendation. Call your physician. Call 2 of them. Get a written second opinion. Read the author's note on the following page, which covers this in more formal language. Every patient in this book appears under a pseudonym: Mr. H, Miss T, Miss W, Miss X. Some identifying details have been altered, further a profession changed, a hometown moved 1 prefecture over, a child's age shifted by a year. The events are real. The people are real. I have done what I can to make sure that neither the people nor their families are findable. Private clinics appear under alphabetical pseudonyms: A Clinic C, Corporation J Group. I've been careful here. Some of these institutions are still operating. Some of the individuals inside them have a great deal more money than I do and better lawyers. The choice to anonymize is partly legal prudence and partly, I hope, a matter of basic decency. The people in this book who helped me are named or thanked in the acknowledgements. The people in this book who hurt patients are not named, because my quarrel with them is about the pattern, not the person. 2 public institutions appear by name: Kurim University and Kyushu University. Both are national public bodies whose involvement with international patients in the relevant years is already part of the public record. Individual physicians within them remain anonymous. If you buy books to read on a plane, this one will probably travel well. It is not short, but the chapters are. If you buy books because you are facing a medical decision and you want the inside view, I have tried to give you an honest one. I cannot give you a happy one. The response rate for the therapies in this book was, for most patients, a figure I learned to translate carefully into Mandarin in the summer of 2014 in the front seat of a rented Toyota, before I fully understood what it meant. You will see that figure in chapter 1. I will not give it away here. Turn the page and we will start with a phone call. Chichuan Lin, Fukuoka, Spring 2026. That is the end of this chapter. Thank you for listening. I will see you in the next one. 12 Years Across Borders. A memoir by Chichuan Lin. Front matter. Author's note. This book is a work of memoir. The events described are drawn from the author's direct experience between 2014 to 2026, supplemented by contemporaneous notebooks, calendars, correspondence, and invoices, not medical advice. Nothing in this book constitutes medical advice, and nothing in it should be used as the basis for a treatment decision. Several chapters describe specific oncology therapies, including peptide vaccines, fused cell immunotherapy, checkpoint inhibitors, and combinations thereof. Some of these therapies were investigational at the time of the events described. Some remain unapproved by the United States Food and Drug Administration. Response rates, dosing regimens, and protocols mentioned in the text reflect the author's recollection of clinical conversations that took place, in some cases, more than a decade ago. Readers considering any treatment mentioned here should consult a licensed physician in their own jurisdiction. The author is not a physician and has never practiced medicine. His role throughout the period described is that of a medical coordinator, a role that in the United States does not have an exact equivalent. Patient privacy. All patients in this book appear under pseudonyms. In most cases, identifying details beyond the pseudonym have been altered, profession shifted to a related one, a hometown moved, an age adjusted, a family member's role reassigned. The medical circumstances described are substantially accurate, the identifiers surrounding them are not. Where composite treatment has been used to protect a specific family, this is disclosed in chapter and notes. No real patient name appears in these pages. Corporate pseudonyms. Private clinics, investment groups, and corporations appear under alphabetical pseudonyms throughout. C Corporation, F Biomedical, HC Corporation, J Group, R Clinic, S Clinic. These pseudonyms are consistent within the book, but do not correspond to the alphabetical order of the real entities. And the author has deliberately avoided any detail that would permit unambiguous identification. Two public institutions appear under their actual names, Kurum University and Kyushu University, both of which had publicly documented engagement with international patients during the relevant years. Individual physicians within those institutions are not named. Currency and figures. Monetary figures appear in Japanese yen with an approximate United States dollar equivalent in parentheses, calculated at the exchange rate prevailing at the time of the event, described rather than at the time of writing. The yen-dollar rate moved from roughly 105 to the dollar in 2014 to roughly 150 to the dollar in 2024. Readers converting figures mentally should keep this range in mind. Taiwanese dollar and Chinese yuan figures are handled the same way. All monetary amounts are approximated. Invoices, fee schedules, and internal accounting from the period have been consulted where available, but the author has rounded figures for readability and has not attempted forensic precision. Jurisdictions. This book describes events and regulatory frameworks across 3 jurisdictions. Japan's Pharmaceuticals and Medical Devices Act, as known in Japanese as the PMD Act or Yakio, the Regenerative Medicine Safety Act of 2014, and the Personal Information Protection Act, APPI, are referenced where relevant. United States frameworks including Food and Drug Administration approval pathways and HIPAA are mentioned by way of comparison for Anglo-American readers and are not the subject of legal analysis here. Taiwan's Personal Data Protection Act governs the handling of Taiwanese patient information described in several chapters. The author is not a lawyer and no statement in this book should be construed as a legal opinion. Defamation and good faith. Some events described in this book, notably the 2016 regulatory action against a clinic and the subsequent 4-month treatment gap, involve institutions whose conduct the author regards as harmful to patients. These accounts are given from the author's direct experience. Where the author's interpretation of motive or intent is speculative, the text says so. The publisher has reviewed the manuscript for defamation risk under both United States and United Kingdom standards. Voice. This book was originally drafted in traditional Chinese with a subsequent Japanese edition, and has been adapted into English by the author with editorial support. It is not a direct translation. Some passages have been rewritten in English from scratch. Others have been reconstructed from the Chinese or Japanese with substantial changes of structure and emphasis. Where the three editions diverge, the author considers the English version the authoritative text for English language readers. Acknowledgements. A full list of people who supported the works described in these pages, and the work of writing about it appears at the end of the book. Sichuan Lin, Fukuoka, Japan, Spring 2026. That is the end of this chapter. Thank you for listening. I will see you in the next one. 12 Years Across Borders. A memoir by Sichuan Lin. Prologue. The call that started it. It is a Tuesday afternoon in April 2026. My office is on the 4th floor of an aging building in Hakata, Fukuoka. Outside the window there is a narrow slice of sky between two taller buildings. On my desk there is a laptop, a phone, and a coffee I let go cold an hour ago. On the wall there is a framed certificate that says in Japanese Shinho, Representative Director, Sichuan Lin. I am 43. The company is 11 years old. I have been doing cross-border medical coordination for 12. In those 12 years I have gotten a lot of things wrong. I've taken on cases that turned out to be disasters. I have written off invoices I never collected. I have signed contracts that read, on second inspection, like traps with neat font. I have turned down stable jobs and walked away from flattering investment offers. I have sat across conference tables from Chinese private equity men in Hangzhou and across hospital desks from Japanese department heads who wanted me out of the room. I have watched families sell apartments to pay for treatments that did not work. I have stood in the corridor outside the ICU with a wife who had run out of tears. I have carried the paperwork for a body being flown home. I have also seen a handful of things I cannot explain. A man who was told he had 6 months to live, who is now calling me 10 years later to ask, Hayashi-san, how have you been? Whether that adds up to success or failure, I genuinely do not know. The company did not get big. I have 2 colleagues. My bank balance is not the sort of number anyone writes a magazine profile about, but I am still here. Still picking up the phone. Still driving patients to clinics. That at 43 feels like enough. The whole thing started with a phone call in the summer of 2014. I was 31, finishing a master's degree in materials engineering at a satellite campus of Waseda University in Oreo at the northern end of Kaohsiung. My research was on epoxy resin, specifically the effect of nano and micro scale fillers on its dielectric breakdown under high voltage. If you bring it up at a dinner party, people nod politely and change the subject. That is the correct response. That summer I was holding an internal job offer, a NAT, from a semiconductor packaging company in Kita Prefecture. The work matched my degree. The salary was modest but stable. There was health insurance, a company dormitory, and a 40-year career path laid out at my feet like a carpet. On paper, the next move was decided. In practice, something quiet was bothering me. If I took the offer, I would become a competent, unremarkable engineer in a Japanese corporate structure that had 200,000 other men exactly like me. And then what? I could not get past the, and then what? Then the phone rang. The number was from Taiwan. I did not recognize it. The voice on the other end was a man slightly younger than me, speaking careful Mandarin. He introduced himself, apologized for calling out of the blue, and explained. His father had been diagnosed with cancer in Taipei. The Taiwanese physicians had told the family there was nothing more to be done. Someone in the family had found, through an online search, a clinical trial at Kurum University, a 90-minute drive from where I was sitting. They wanted to fly over. They needed an interpreter. Someone had given him my number. I did not think about it for long. Sure, I said, come over. Then I added the caveat. I should be honest with you. I've never done medical interpretation. My field is materials engineering. If you're okay with that, come. If not, no hard feelings. Find someone else. There was a pause of a few seconds on the line. It's fine, he said. We'd like you to do it. That was the whole exchange. There was no swelling music. No cinematic shaft of light through the lab window. A family needed a translator. I said yes, we hung up. If you had told me that afternoon that the call would still be running 12 years later, that I would sit in a Fukuoka office in 2026, writing about it in English for readers in countries I had never visited, I would have laughed at you and gone back to my thesis. Looking back, I think I took that call because of a single habit that was already installed in me by the age of 31. When someone asks me, do you want to try this? My default answer is yes. That is not a philosophy, it is a reflex. It was the same reflex that got me through graduate school applications I had no business clearing. The same reflex that sent me onto overnight buses to Tokyo for job interviews I was statistically unlikely to win. The same reflex, now I think about it, that had gotten me onto the plane to Japan in the first place at 27. When the rational move would have been to stay in Taipei and find an engineering job at home. Whether something is interesting, whether it pays, whether I will regret it, those I decide afterward. The question do I try answered years ago. This habit has helped me and it has hurt me in roughly equal measure. It helped me pick up the phone in 2014. It helped me turn down the TIDA offer a few months later. It helped me register Xingyihao the following year. It helped me get on flights to Shanghai, Beijing, and Hangzhou when the work required it. It helped me sit down in April 2020 when my revenue had gone to zero inside of 4 weeks and start learning Python from scratch at the age of 37. It also got me into some of the worst decisions of my career. It got me into contracts I should have read twice. It got me into partnerships with people I should have walked away from in the first meeting. It got me into investments I should have stayed out of. It kept me at the table in several rooms a wiser man would have cashed in and left. I do not regret the setting. If my default had been probably not, I would today be a mid-career engineer at a packaging firm in Tita with a stable salary, a company apartment, and a weekend routine of driving the kids to an amusement park. There is nothing wrong with that life. It is simply not mine. I picked try. I kept picking it for 12 years. I am still here. The 12 years that follow that phone call are what this book is about. The summer of 2014 and the drive down to Kurum in a rented white Toyota with a dying man in the passenger seat. The autumn of 2015 and the chaos of opening a company with no money and an employee whose salary had to be paid on the 25th of each month. The night in October 2015, when the Japanese Ministry of Health shut down a clinic I had built half my business on, and the 4 months of silence that followed. The morning in 2017, when I walked through the gate of the Chinese embassy in Tokyo to apply for a travel document, not entirely sure I would walk back out. The spring of 2020, when I spent 3 months calling my suppliers in Istanbul at 4 in the morning and watching every other line of revenue collapse. The night in late 2022, when I typed a Japanese pathology report into a chat interface on my laptop and watched a clean Mandarin translation come back in 3 minutes, and sat there in the dark for a long time trying to work out what had just happened to my career. This is not a success manual. There is no "you can do it too" here. No, if you follow these 10 rules. No triumphant arc in which the protagonist realizes his calling and rises through adversity to a corner office. This is a record of an ordinary person trying to stay alive, professionally and personally, in a country that is not his own. I met good people and bad people. I got some things right and a great many things wrong. I made money and I lost it. I helped some families and I failed others. I learned slowly how to tell the difference between a Japanese company that will keep its word and one that will not. And I paid the tuition for that education in cash. If any of this turns out to be useful to you, the useful part is probably this: life is a long sequence of attempts that mostly do not work. If you do not try a thing, you will not know whether it fits you. If you try it, you may fail. You may take a detour that costs you years. You may worry your mother. You may exhaust your spouse. But at the end of the sequence, you will have lived a life that is recognizably shaped like you and not like someone else's blueprint. That shape may not be impressive. It may not look like success. There may not be much money left at the end of it. It will still be yours. That, I have come to think, is enough. The story begins in the summer of 2014 in a lab in Oreo. At the moment the phone started ringing, I picked up. That is the end of this chapter. Thank you for listening. I will see you in the next one.